At the Orange County Community Foundation, we believe in transforming our community's heartfelt intention into greater impact for good. By helping donors find the causes they love, we strengthen our community. We lead the way with bold solutions, combining giving strategy and community intelligence. Leveraging our generous donors and passionate partners, we amplify the power of giving. Together, we are helping to build an Orange County where all have the opportunity to thrive. OCCF is a proud underwriter of community programming and OC World.
Santiago Canyon College is an innovative learning community in Orange, California, with more than 260 certificate and degree programs. Santiago Canyon College is a proud sponsor of community programming and OC World.
OC World is made possible by the generous contributions of the Marisla Foundation, the Keith and Judy Swain Family Foundation, Orange County Community Foundation, the University of California, Irvine, Socorro and Ernesto Vasquez Family Foundation, Crevier Family Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
Joining me now, author of that recent op-ed in the Washington Post, Trump is targeting law firms and academia. Why don't they speak up? Dean of UC Berkeley School of Law, Erwin Chemerinsky. Dean, nice to see you again. Listen, law firms, they've got ethical duties, but they are businesses that exist to make money. So in settling with President Trump, are they not making a prudent business decision?
I don't think they're making a prudent decision at all. What we've got to remember is that everything you described is blatantly illegal. And if all the law firms had stuck together, they would win. 3 judges have already said, and it's 3 out of 3, that what Trump was doing violated the law. And I think what's sad here is the law firm settling with President Trump just enables him to go further. We all learned on the playground that if you give in to a bully, you make it worse.
Hi, I'm Scott Hayes, executive producer of OC World. Today we have the distinct privilege of speaking with one of the most respected legal thinkers of our times, Erwin Chemerinsky, founding dean of UCI School of Law and now dean of Berkeley School of Law. A highly regarded expert in constitutional law, his research covers such vital issues as civil liberties, freedom of the press, the right to assemble, and the evolving role of the judiciary in an increasingly divided political climate. Dean Chemerinsky has authored numerous works, including his most recent book, No Democracy Lasts Forever: How the Constitution Threatens the United States. Keith, thank you for being here today.
Such a pleasure to talk with you.
I want to make it clear, I'm not a legal scholar, I'm not a constitutional expert, so whatever you can do to explain it to me in such a way that I can get it, I would appreciate it.
I'll try.
I appreciate that. As we approach a significant milestone in our country's history, the 250-year anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, right? How significant do you see this particular document in today's modern democracy?
The Declaration of Independence contained 27 grievances against the King of England. Above all, those in the colonies objected to the untrammeled executive power that the king exercised. It seems so ironic at this moment in time, we see a president who, more than any other in history, is trying to exercise unchecked power.
Does that document factor into any discussions these days? I don't hear it coming up much.
The Constitution is binding and government must comply with it. The Declaration of Independence has no binding effect, but it certainly states basic values and it explains the historical foundation of the United States.
Now, reflecting on your book, No Democracy Lasts Forever, what are the primary factors that you see as threats to the stability of our democracy?
It's important to emphasize that the manuscript for the book was completed in the summer of 2023, The title was chosen in September of 2023, long before the November 24 election or January 20th, 2025. What is the premise of the book is that I really worry that our country is facing a crisis of democracy. The federal government has lost the faith of the people. The country is deeply divided. And I think some of what accounts for this is choices that were made in drafting the Constitution in 1787 that are haunting us today. Things like the Electoral College, 2 senators per state, life tenure for Supreme Court justices, the choices made with regard to slavery and race, how difficult it is to amend the Constitution.
What current legal and/or political safeguards do you suggest that might help prevent this potential decline of our democracy?
Ultimately, I think we're going to have to look to the courts, but it's not clear that the courts will stand up to President Trump. I don't see any indication that Congress is willing to stand up to President Trump. He's surrounded by people who are loyal to him. They're not going to stand up. So it's about the courts. And unfortunately, so far, the lower courts have been willing to stand up to President Trump, but the Supreme Court hasn't been.
If not the courts, then whom?
If not the courts, then ultimately it would be, can the people put enough pressure on Congress and on the president to change course? But if Congress won't stand up to the president, if the courts won't restrain the president, then we really have a situation the president can do anything he wants.
There seems to be some sort of retribution in the current administration when it comes to people who speak against the current administration. And I was curious to know whether you have any concerns for yourself.
There is no doubt that the Trump administration is acting out of retribution. As a political candidate, Donald Trump said he would act out of retribution. Take, for example, some of the orders about the law firms. He went after a major law firm, Perkins Coie, because it had represented Hillary Clinton. He went after another law firm, Covington Burling, because one of its lawyers had worked with Jack Smith, the special counsel prosecuting Donald Trump. And yet I also believe that authoritarians come to power based on silence, that the only way of stopping an authoritarian is to speak up. And so I feel it's so important to use my position, my voice, to speak up against what I'm seeing.
Why do you think that you were unsuccessful largely in getting all the law schools on board to sign the letter that you circulated? I gave the data already in terms of how many you solicited and how many actually agreed.
I think people are afraid to speak up right now. They think that if they speak up, they're going to make their universities a target. So again, if all 197 law school deans had signed a letter, we would have protection just because it was all of us. Unfortunately, only 79 out of 197 signed.
And is there that little voice inside your head that does have concerns?
I've watched how President Trump has acted out of retribution to others. So obviously there has to be the concern, what might he do to me or what he might do to my university? And yet I also know that we have to speak up. Authoritarians come to power and stay in power by silencing critics.
There's a quote that I read of yours that suggested that, and this was before the last election, you predicted that if Donald Trump wins the election and there's a Republican House and a Republican Senate, we will see the most serious talk about secession that we've seen since the Civil War. What's your current thinking about the possibility of secession?
I want to be clear that I think secession will serve no one's interests. I don't support secession. But I think the more extreme Donald Trump becomes, and the less Congress constrains him, the more you will see serious talk of secession in places like California, Oregon, Washington, New York, and Illinois. Already there's an effort to qualify on the ballot in California an initiative to ask the people their views with regard to secession. As we speak, we're about 75 days into the Trump presidency. We have never seen lawlessness like this from any president. We've never seen a president so systematically say he can disregard the Constitution and laws of the United States. I think this really will fuel talk of secession in the states that I mentioned.
What role should media play in this current environment? There seems to be a lack of trust even in media these days, not just government, but media. And now we've got social media, we have disinformation, we have misinformation. What role should media play or continue to play or revise the way they play with the current administration?
As I talk to people about what they can do, the first thing I always say is be informed. I've heard too many people say they've stopped reading the news or listening to the news because how discouraged they are about their hearing. That's exactly the opposite of what people need to do right now. And they depend then on the media for accurate information about what the Trump administration is doing, clear explanations about why it's illegal. And the role of the news media then, as it's always been, to accurately report and to accurately and fully explain.
Orange County, we're 3.2 million people. We're the 9th largest economy in the country, and we're one of the largest news deserts. OC World is a nonprofit multimedia company. We're funded by private foundations, UCI, Orange County Community Foundation, and others. How do you see the value of a new model like this, where it's not funded by advertisers, it's funded by the community?
This model and OC World are truly essential. There is a relative news desert in Orange County. Unfortunately, there are so many news deserts in California and around the country. We have to think of new models to provide news and information to people. And that's why I'm so excited about OC World.
Now, I teach part-time college, and I survey the students about their trust in media, and they have zero trust in media. When I try to gauge where they go for their information, it's all social media. And as we know, social media may not be the most reliable source of information.
I think we have a real problem in this country right now with people receiving, or more accurately, not receiving accurate information. If people aren't informed, then we have no chance of functioning as a democracy. And so my hope is that the media will inform people. And what you're seeing also from your students is a loss of faith in all the institutions. We've lost faith in the federal government and the institutions there. People have lost faith in universities. People have lost faith in the media. That's really a recipe for horrible consequences in a society.
How would you advise universities that appear to be willing to compromise on various rights in order to protect their federal funding?
One of the things that we all learned, probably on the playground, is you get into a bully, it only makes it worse. So if universities or law firms capitulate, it just enables the Trump administration to go after more universities, more law firms. And so I think it's so important that universities stand up and stand together and say they won't give in to what's clearly illegal activities by the Trump administration in cutting off funds. There is no doubt that the cutoff of funds, for example, to Columbia or Princeton or Harvard or Brown violated the law, and it's important that the universities fight back. The president must comply with court orders, just as everyone else has to comply with court orders. The core of the rule of law is that no one, not even the president, is above the law. Long ago, in 1803, in Marbury v. Madison, the Supreme Court said it is emphatically the province and duty of the Judicial Department to say what the law is. The court made clear that the judiciary has the authority to compel the president to act or prohibit the president from violating the law. What happens if the president violates a court order? Well, those underneath the president could be held in contempt of court, which could include a jail sentence. Also, there is the possibility, at least in theory, of impeachment and removal from office. And hopefully the public will unite and say that violating a court order really strikes at the heart of democracy. Because if the president doesn't have to comply with court orders, then we really have a dictator.
If a president has the capacity to use the law to his advantage up to the point that it's not breaking the law, is that part of his responsibilities as president?
The president takes an oath to uphold the Constitution and laws of the United States. So long as the president is not violating the Constitution or laws, the president has the authority to act. However, what we've seen in so many regards is President Trump violating the Constitution and laws of the United States by imprisoning people without due process, by eliminating federal programs created by statute, by firing people of statutory protection at their jobs, by revoking birthright citizenship that's provided by the Constitution, by imposing penalties on universities without following the law, to act against law firms with retribution. All of this is lawless.
The 22nd Amendment is clear. President Trump has to give up his office after his second term, but he refuses perhaps to accept this. Is there a legal argument one could make that could reverse or challenge the enforceability of this amendment?
The 22nd Amendment says, no person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice. The 22nd Amendment is thus clear that a person can't serve more than 2 terms as president. There is no legal path that Donald Trump has to serving a 3rd term. Now, of course, if the Constitution were amended, the 22nd Amendment could be repealed, but that would take 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress and a vote of 3/4 of the states. There's no way Democrats in Congress or Democratic-controlled state legislatures would ever go for that. So unless there's a coup, unless the Constitution gets suspended, Donald Trump can't be president after January 20th, 2029.
The Constitution can be amended, it can be revised. You have encouraged the opportunity of perhaps even rewriting. I'm not sure I understand your position on the Constitution when it comes to what it may look like in the future.
Someday the United States will have a new Constitution. No Constitution lasts forever. The more the Supreme Court says the meaning of the Constitution is limited to what was thought in 1787, the more absurd it is to be governed by it today. So I think at some point there will be a constitutional convention. My position is we should think very carefully about how we'll do it and what the process will be for ratifying the new document.
Thank you. I'm going to jump around a little bit for you today.
Yeah, anything you want.
We are here in the backstage of the Berkeley Theater. You're about to do a program, U.S. Shakespeare Trial. What that's about?
For many years now, the UCI Drama Department has done a series of trials based on Shakespeare's plays. I think Hamlet might have been the first. We've done Romeo and Juliet. The next one, it's about to come up, is about the Shakespeare play, Much Ado About Nothing. Professor from Stanford, Bernie Myler, will be the prosecutor of one of the characters in the play, and I'll be the defense lawyer. And everybody in the audience gets to vote. They're the jury.
And you prepared for this trial?
I do.
How much time do you spend preparing for a performance such as this?
A lot of time. I have a strong aversion to public embarrassment, so I prepare a lot so that I don't humiliate myself in public.
You're the founding dean here at UCI. What were your years like?
It was an amazing experience to be the founding dean of UCI Law School. I arrived July 1st, 2008, and I was the dean until I left June 30th, 2017. Of all the things that I've done professionally in my life, the one that I'm most proud of is having had the opportunity to be the founding dean for a really great law school on a terrific campus.
And do you have any current plans for a next book?
I've completed the manuscript of a book titled Free Speech and Academic Freedom that I've co-authored with Howard Gilman, the Chancellor of UC Irvine, and the book will be published by Yale University Press and is scheduled to be out in January of 2026.
We've seen increasing tensions between campuses, free speech, and the right to assemble peacefully and protest, particularly when controversial speakers are invited, etc. How do you believe universities should balance the rights of individuals to freely express their views with the need at the same time to protect students and faculty from harassment?
What's crucial is that all ideas and views can be expressed on a college campus. However, there's no right to do so in a way that endangers others. The First Amendment doesn't protect the right to engage in speech that's incitement, doesn't protect the right to engage in speech that's a true threat. It doesn't protect the right to engage in speech that's harassing. And one way in which we accommodate this is by time, place, and manner restrictions. So the campus can't say there's a viewpoint that's out of bounds, but the campus can say there are places and times where protests can't happen.
Your new book, by the way, what would be the premise of that book?
Howard Gilman, the Chancellor of UC Irvine, and I wrote a book published in 2017 called Free Speech on Campus. And we laid out what we think are the basic principles with regard to expression, academic freedom, and college campuses. So much has happened since we finished the manuscript in 2016. We've written a new book, not a second edition, that really develops what we put forth in the earlier book and applies it to all the things that we saw in recent years. So we talk about the campus protests from the spring of 2024. We talk about the state laws throughout, especially conservative states, prohibiting diversity, equity, and inclusion, or critical race theory from being taught. We talk about what's the role of campus leaders, but ultimately it all comes down to a college campus has to be committed that all ideas and views can be expressed, that academic freedom is really central to what a university is about.
And do you believe that most of the campuses across the country are adhering to those?
Overall, I think that free speech is protected on campuses. Every day on campuses throughout the country, speech occurs, even controversial speech, without attention. It's only the isolated incident where speech is stopped that gets attention, or something like we saw in spring of 2024 with encampments at many campuses across the country. But overall, I think campuses and universities are committed to speech, though sometimes they fail to live up to their commitment.
For our viewers, and we reach about 15.5 million households in Southern California who are not legal scholars, who just want to make sure they get through their lives unharmed, what sort of hope might you be able to provide them as we face a new, perhaps dividing current administration?
The Constitution has governed this country with democratic rule since 1787. There have been other challenges to the Constitution and democracy, but the Constitution and our democracy have proven resilient, and I'm very hopeful that they'll withstand this challenge as well.
Could you imagine a future without the current Constitution and what a new one might look like?
I can't imagine a future without the Constitution. I can imagine an apocalyptic one where we move towards authoritarianism. No democracy lasts forever. We know of many countries in the world that were democracies and no longer are. But I can also imagine a new constitution someday that's even better in protecting freedom and advancing equality.
What would the process take, and how many years would it take to advance that new constitution?
I certainly thought there were a lot what the process should be. How many years? It's impossible to know. As we speak, we're 75 days into the Trump administration, and I could never imagine what we've seen in less than 3 months. So it's hard to know what's going to follow, where we go, and what kind of a constitution might emerge from it.
Dean Chemerinsky, thank you so much for your time today. I know you've got to do a performance on stage in about 5 minutes, and we do appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's really my pleasure.
I think it's so important when we look at the last 75 days to realize that it is not in the range of normal. That indeed what we have seen in less than 3 months is unprecedented in American history. We have never seen a president so such disregard for the Constitution and laws of the United States. I will mention a number of examples, but this is a place where the sum is greater than the parts. When you put all of these together, and so many more that I don't have time to talk about, you can see why I come to the conclusion that democracy is in danger. Because ultimately I do believe that the power rests with the people to protect, even to save American democracy. Let me suggest 3 things that I think we all need to do. First, we need to be informed. I have heard so many people say, I stopped reading or watching the news. It's just too upsetting. We cannot afford to do that. We must be informed of everything that's going on in the government. We must come to understand its legality or illegality, its constitutionality or unconstitutionality. And we must make sure that those who we know are also informed. Second, we must be involved. There are so many ways to be involved. There are many organizations that are fighting hard right now against the actions that I mentioned and to protect democracy. They need our help. They need volunteers if you have time. They need our financial support if you can afford it. But we also can get involved in other ways. Everyone in this sanctuary is involved in groups, in havaras, in book clubs, in Rotary clubs, in other associations. We need for them to be focusing on these issues. And we need for all of those groups to get involved. And third, We need to speak up in every way we can. We need to write to our congressmen and senators. They really do pay attention to the calls and letters that they get. We need to write letters to the editor. We need to sign petitions. And we need to go to rallies. One of the things that most scares me is the extent to which people already are being chilled into silence. As I've been confronted by this silence, I've constantly had in mind words that are familiar to all of you. They came from a pastor who had been in the concentration camps in Germany, Martin Niemöller. And he said, I can quote, "They came for the socialists, and I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't speak up. They came for the trade unionists, and I was not a trade unionist, so I didn't speak up. They came for the Jews, and I wasn't Jewish, so I didn't speak up. Then they came for me, and there was no one to speak up." Let these not be the words that we have to utter in a few years. I began by asking the question, is democracy in danger? If you agree with me, the answer is yes. Then it's the responsibility of each and every one of us to act and let our voices be heard to protect democracy. Democracy cannot die over the will of the people.
I'm looking for help. I have 3 young kids, and it's just me. I'm working 2 jobs on the night shift, and I'm still not making enough. The electric bill came today, and if I pay it, there won't be anything left for groceries.
So we had to use our savings to pay for hospital bills because we both lost our health insurance. I've never had to ask anyone for help, but I don't know if we'll be able to afford his medicine this month.
I put in application after application, but no one seems to want to hire me. I'm living out of my car. I can't keep going like this. I don't know where to turn for help.